Good afternoon, friends, and thank you very much for being here this afternoon for a media interaction on India-US Energy Dialogue. We have with us Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Deputy Chairman of Planning Commission, and Dr. Ernest Muniz, US Secretary of Energy. We will start with the brief opening remarks by Dr. Ahluwalia, followed by brief opening remarks by Dr. Muniz. Thereafter, we will open the floor for a couple of questions on India-US Energy Dialogue only. May I now request?
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming to this press conference. I'm delighted to say that we had a very successful energy dialogue. As you know, these energy dialogues began in 2005. I had the pleasure of having one earlier with Secretary Muniz. This was, in a way, going to be the last of the energy dialogues before the general election, so I'm really glad that we were able to have a very thorough review of what has happened. You will be receiving a press statement, which I think will be distributed shortly if it hasn't already been distributed. But basically, we reviewed the different areas where the US and India are collaborating in the area of energy, including more recently the whole issue of what constitutes a sensible, sustainable, low-carbon growth path. And the areas that we looked at are coal, renewable energy, power and energy efficiency, oil and natural gas, where there are working groups. One other very important part of the dialogue is a joint Clean Energy Research Council, which has been set up, under which consortia of Indian and US entities collaborate in doing some actual research. And they've done some very interesting work in the area of solar energy, in the area of biofuels, second-generation biofuels, and also energy efficiency in buildings. So we had a review of that. We agreed that it's been a very productive exchange, and several aspects of it perhaps need to be expanded, and I'm sure that in the years ahead it will continue to make a very useful contribution to, from our point of view, enabling us to evolve a viable, sustainable energy strategy that can support a reasonably high growth rate and at the same time ensure that we do not become excessively import dependent in energy and also that our energy mix is within reasonable limits of sustainability. So we've had a very good meeting. Mr. Secretary?
Thank you, Dr. Ahluwalia, and certainly want to endorse all of your statements, and I'll add a few additional thoughts. Certainly, since the beginning of the dialogue, and I particularly reinforce the interaction of President Obama and the Prime Minister in 2009 to kick off the partnership to advance clean energy. As was just stated, we have seen tremendous progress, and to be honest, I put this in the context of many of our international collaborations. First of all, this is an extremely important one, and secondly, I think it's one that has shown very concrete results. As was mentioned today, we had reports from three consortia. And if I just take one of them, the one on solar energy, for example, it was remarkable the way that individual projects are being contributed to on both sides for novel activities that are aimed at some of the key issues in solar energy. And that ranges from new materials, such as organic photovoltaics, to very practical and very important issues that we both deal with, things like how do you manage dust on photovoltaics. It may sound very lowbrow, but it's actually a very important problem that in addition affects water resources. And so the way the groups are working together and the increase in terms of student and researcher exchange, I think, is extremely good, and we are looking, in fact, to see how we can broaden the program. A second element I'd like to refer to is, in fact, last June, when I was here, it was my first trip outside the United States as Secretary of Energy. I came here to India with Secretary Kerry, and we, I think, furthered a dialogue. And then in September, when Prime Minister Singh visited the United States, then I was very pleased to sign, along with my Indian colleague, the what's called the peace agreement, which is now moving towards looking to energy access, particularly off-grid, for those who are unserved or underserved with energy services in especially rural India. So this is another direction that we are going, and that's very important. Finally, I will say that in all of these efforts, and today it was very, very clear that it is coming into reality, the private sector engagement is absolutely central. And the private sector is putting in resources. In fact, the PACE initiative has mobilized close to $2 billion of public and private investment in those focus areas: solar, biofuels, buildings, et cetera. And we are now trying to go to the stage of encouraging business-to-business collaborations between India and the United States. And I will say there that the Department of Energy is very pleased to be part of this, but I should emphasize that it's a whole of government activity, and other groups like the Trade and Development Agency, AID, Department of Commerce, Department of State, Exim Bank, OPIC, these are all agencies that we're working together to advance our US-India energy dialogue. So with that, thank you.
The floor is now open for questions. Dr. Akhilesh Suman.
So this is Akhilesh Suman from Rajya Sabha Television. It's the Parliament of India's upper house channel. My question to both the dignitaries, there was a very strong desire in India and US about nuclear agreement was done, but there was no implementation. Could you articulate what came as an implementable result in this energy dialogue, because the country was waiting for the long time, something is coming out or not?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this. I should add, by the way, that I didn't actually mention the Civil Nuclear Working Group. That's because it isn't meeting here. The meeting of the Civil Nuclear Working Group is going to take place in Mumbai tomorrow, and they will be meeting the Secretary and giving him an assessment. You're right that many people, by the way, the fact that the Civil Nuclear Agreement was signed is itself a major breakthrough, but it was also our intention, and it still is our intention, that this should actually lead to the establishment of new reactors, including from the United States. Those negotiations are actually ongoing. I know it's taken a little bit longer than perhaps you thought. Probably the Secretary will get a first-hand account of what is happening in Mumbai. But I'm confident that the problems that have arisen can be resolved within the framework of the Civil Nuclear Liability Act. So we just hope that this will get sorted out. But otherwise, the fact that there was an agreement, the fact that it lifted a lot of restrictions, India has already benefited from that. I think we need to make sure that the nuclear generation capacities now get put into place. And let me say that in our 12th plan, and also in the various longer-term energy modeling exercises that we've done, rapid expansion of nuclear capacity is very much a part of the India energy security scenario. And I believe there was some progress last year in one contract, so it's not the case that even in the Indo-US civil nuclear, there's been no change. But I feel we have to do more, no question about it.
Yes, please.
Well, I would...
Sorry.
Oh, I would just add a little bit to that. First of all, I would certainly reinforce, I think we all feel that we need to pick up the pace here. I think certainly the other areas of collaboration have gone much faster. But one of the key issues is resolution of the liability convention, to see that India is aligned with the International Convention on Supplementary Compensation, which we expect to come into force this year. But I think, as Dr. Ahluwalia said, one thing to keep in mind is that resolving this convention is important for all companies, including Indian companies, and that in turn will be resolving that is an enabler to reach the goals of nuclear power as a major part of the clean energy future. But in terms of accomplishments, if we look at things that have happened, actually I would name two. One is, as was already stated, what's called the small contract was put into force during the Prime Minister Singh's visit to Washington last fall, and that has Westinghouse working with colleagues here in terms of advancing a possible deal there. But there's a second area I would also emphasize, and that is now a nuclear energy R&D collaboration. And that is going, I think, pretty well. In fact, a very specific accomplishment is that a particular austenitic alloy has been developed here in India and is now, in fact, in testing at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory under nuclear reactor conditions, expected to lead to joint publications. So we are also working on some very basic R&D issues together.
Yes, please.
Sir, Mr. Secretary, I'm Shishir from Hindu Business Line newspaper. My question is that United States moved to WTO on domestic content for solar industry. What's the current stand, and do you think that it is affecting some kind of working collaboration between India and US on solar things, sir?
Well, as you know, the United States has asked for WTO discussions in terms of local content issues, both kind of a phase 1 and a phase 2, and those discussions remain to happen. Our view fundamentally in the end is that the best way to both grow the sector and to ultimately establish strong and competitive manufacturing lies in building the market. In fact, I would give an analogy in the United States that we have had now a very rapid expansion in wind. And it wasn't that long ago when the supply chain for our wind turbines was around 25% domestic, and now by committing to the market growing, and now we have 60 or 70,000 megawatts deployed, we're now up to 60 or 70% of the supply chain domestic, because market attracts those kinds of investments. So obviously our view and the point of the WTO discussion is to advance more that approach than a regulatory approach, but we'll see what happens in those discussions.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm Megha from PTI. So you talked about solar energy also. So solar energy, you have three issues like tariff, land availability, because it requires huge amounts of land, and the overall efficiency of a solar project, because it works at 1/5 of its total capacity. So I just wanted to know, how have you addressed these three issues as far as solar projects are concerned?
Yes, sir, please.
Well, all very valid points, but I think on any it's true that costs are involved, but unlike other plants, there's no maintenance cost. I mean, there's no fuel cost of generating electricity from solar energy. Yes, land can be a problem, but most of the time, the land that's being used is not agriculturally valuable, and there's large areas of the country where there is land of that kind available, which could be used for solar power. The bottom line on the economics of solar power is that costs have been coming down sharply. Even today, costs are actually on a par, if not better actually, than power that's produced from diesel generation. And there's very large captive diesel generation, so people are clearly willing to pay extra costs for power generated on the diesel side. So I think there is certainly scope, even at present costs, there is scope for using more solar power. That's our policy, and that's what we intend to do. But more importantly, as Secretary Muniz pointed out in the joint research that's being done, there's a lot of very, very interesting research being done, all of which, not just this research, but also globally, all of which could lead to a very significant drop in cost per unit of solar power. So frankly, that is practically a win-win area. There are problems how to handle the regulatory structure, how to ensure cross-subsidization. But in the long-term energy scenario alternatives that I've shared with Secretary Muniz, I mean, this is a document that we made public. It's on our website and enables people to go and look at different ways of meeting in India's energy demands. It's very clear that we have to have a huge ramping up of supply coming from this sector over the next 20, 30 years or so.
If I may just add a couple of points, just to reinforce the enthusiasm I think that we share for solar energy. If you look in the United States, last year we had about 2,300 megawatts of utility scale solar introduced, so it's really going up rapidly. Secondly, while a few years ago the Department of Energy had to provide some assistance to build the first utility scale photovoltaic plants, there are now 10 such projects, that is more than 100 megawatts each, that are completely financed by the private sector. So I think this just shows how the economic situation is changing. And finally, I'll just note that just about a month ago, in 2014, we commissioned, again now initially with DOE support, we commissioned the world's largest solar thermal plant, almost 400 megawatts of a solar tower facility, and if nothing else, I would say those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans, you could see the Tower of Mordor, and it's really cool. Right.
We'll have last two questions. Yes, please.
My name is Tanaka from NHK Japanese Television. I have a question to Mr. Moniz that this India-US energy dialogue has been postponed for once. So how do you think to be here to hold this conference today, and how US put emphasis on this India-US energy dialogue?
Well, all I can say is that we're, as should be evident, we're very pleased to be here today to carry on this dialogue. It's obviously we all understand that there are elections coming up here in India. The people of India will decide how the government goes forward. But I want to emphasize that we have a strong commitment to the USIndia energy dialogue. We believe that this will continue very strongly, and frankly, the fact that we have so many good projects that are going on with U.S. and Indian researchers working together, I think is the foundation for our going forward, and hopefully for being able to expand the collaboration.
Last question, Ms. Ranjit.
So, Ranjit Kumar, Bharat Times. My question refers to the civil nuclear energy issue. Dr. Ahluwalia just now said that the Indo-US nuclear energy cooperation can proceed only within the ambit of India's civil nuclear liability law. But Mr. Moniz, you said that this issue is still to be resolved. Can you explain how this can be resolved? Do you think India needs to dilute its civil nuclear liability law?
Just to make sure I understand, so the question is, how can the nuclear liability law be rationalized? Well, I think the discussions again tomorrow in Mumbai. I think we will hear more about this. But we have been told by our colleagues in India that I think with continued dialogue we can find a way to be consistent with the International Liability Convention that we believe will come into force this year, and Indian law. We are looking forward to that discussion. But I think, as was implied earlier, this must be resolved not only for U.S. companies and for all companies, including Indian companies, if nuclear is to become the part of the clean energy future that we've heard it must be. So all I can say is we'll continue the dialogue, and tomorrow in Mumbai, hopefully we can take one more step forward.
Now, I just want to endorse that point. I mean, whenever you do something new and something complex, different stakeholders can have different views. It is true that it's not only the United States that has raised this issue. Other partners with whom we want to pursue nuclear cooperation have similar concerns. And what I said was that we are hopeful that I don't like the use of the term dilute, within the existing framework of the Civil Nuclear Liability Act, it should be possible to resolve these problems. And this would be relevant not just for U.S. suppliers, it would be relevant for French suppliers, Canadian suppliers, Russian suppliers, and also Indian suppliers. So we have to resolve this one way or the other.
Thank you, friends. With this, we conclude our media interaction. Thank you.